Stop. Do not promise yourself that you will deal with this tomorrow, because tomorrow is exactly what the enemy wants you to keep waiting for. There is someone listening right now who has been feeling a strange sense of urgency lately. You cannot explain it. Nothing looks completely wrong. That something deep inside you keeps whispering, "Pay attention. Don't ignore this. Something is changing." And every time that feeling appears, you distract yourself. You get busy. You scroll. You tell yourself you will think about it later. But later has become dangerous, because the disaster heaven is warning you about is not arriving from outside your life. It is quietly growing inside it. And before this message ends, you will understand exactly what that means. The reason this warning feels personal is because the battle itself is personal. Not everyone is facing what you are facing right now. On the surface, your life may appear normal. People still see you functioning. You still fulfill responsibilities. You still show up where you are expected. You still manage to get through most days. But hidden beneath those routines, something has been slowly draining your discernment. Not your intelligence, not your abilities, your discernment. The ability to recognize what truly deserves your attention. The ability to distinguish urgency from distraction. The ability to hear the quiet voice of wisdom beneath the noise of everyday life. And that loss is more dangerous than most people realize. Because when discernment weakens, people begin fighting the wrong battles. They spend energy solving symptoms while the root problem continues growing unnoticed. There is someone listening right now who has been trying desperately to fix external problems, financial problems, relationship problems, work problems, family problems. That no matter how hard you work, peace never seems to fully return, because the deeper battle is happening somewhere else. Pause. You have been carrying more mental noise than your soul was designed to carry. Not because you are weak, because you have been overloaded. Every day brings more information, more opinions, more responsibilities, more pressure, and eventually, the soul becomes crowded, like a forest path slowly disappearing beneath fallen leaves. The path still exists, but it becomes difficult to recognize. That is what has happened spiritually. The direction has not disappeared. The voice has not disappeared. But too many things have accumulated between you and clarity. And this is where the enemy becomes effective. Not by creating obvious evil, but by creating constant distraction, constant urgency, constant emotional clutter. Because distraction is one of the most effective forms of spiritual blindness. A person who cannot focus often cannot discern. A person who cannot discern often cannot recognize danger. And a person who cannot recognize danger often walks into it unknowingly. That is why heaven interrupted your day. Not because disaster is inevitable, but because disaster is preventable. There is still time. There is still grace. There is still opportunity to recognize what has been hidden. But first, you must become willing to stop and look honestly at what has been happening inside you. There is someone listening right now who feels strangely disconnected from themselves. You have been moving so fast that you have not asked deeper questions in a long time. Questions like, why have I been feeling restless? Why do I keep avoiding silence? Why am I constantly distracted? Why does peace feel harder to maintain than it used to? Those questions matter, because answers often arrive through awareness before they arrive through miracles. And what heaven is preparing to reveal is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to wake you up. Because the disaster being prevented may not be external at all. It may be the slow loss of something far more valuable. Your clarity, your peace, your purpose, your connection to the voice that has been trying to guide you all along. And before we go further, you need to remember something. I have not abandoned you. I still see you. I am still near. And the very fact that you are hearing these words now is evidence that heaven is still reaching for you, because your story is not over. And the warning is not the end of the message. It is the beginning of your rescue. Most people expect darkness to arrive dramatically. They imagine a single mistake, a single disaster, a single moment that changes everything. But that is rarely how it happens. Darkness prefers subtlety. It enters through habits nobody questions, thoughts nobody challenges, patterns nobody notices until they have become deeply rooted. And that is why so many people never recognize the danger until they are already living inside it. There was a time when you noticed small warnings, small convictions, small moments when something inside you whispered, slow down, pay attention. Something is not right, but life kept moving. Responsibilities demanded your focus. Deadlines demanded your energy. People demanded your attention. And eventually, you became accustomed to ignoring those quiet signals. Not intentionally, gradually. Pause, that is how drift begins. Not through rebellion, through neglect. A boat rarely sinks because it suddenly decides to go underwater. It drifts, little by little, current by current, until one day it finds itself somewhere it never intended to be. There is someone listening right now who has been wondering why peace feels harder to access than it once did, why prayer feels more distracted, why joy feels less natural, why inner clarity feels foggy. You assumed it was stress, you assumed it was exhaustion, you assumed it was simply part of growing older, but part of the problem is deeper. You have been feeding some voices while starving others, feeding fear, feeding urgency, feeding distraction, feeding endless mental noise, while the quiet places where wisdom grows have received less and less attention. And what grows stronger eventually becomes louder. That is why the mind becomes crowded. That is why discernment becomes weaker. That is why peace becomes harder to hear. The enemy understands this principle very well. He does not always need to convince people to walk away from God. Sometimes he only needs to keep them too distracted to listen, too busy to reflect, too overwhelmed to notice what is happening, and slowly, their spiritual sensitivity begins fading. That fading is what heaven is addressing right now. Not because you are lost, because you are drifting, and drift can be corrected. Do you remember Gideon? When Hen found him, he was hiding, not because he lacked potential, because fear had slowly reshaped how he saw himself. The problem was not only the external enemy. The problem was the internal agreement he had made with limitation. Many people live there without realizing it. They begin agreeing with fear, agreeing with hopelessness, agreeing with discouragement, until those voices sound more familiar than truth. There is someone listening tonight who has quietly accepted things they were never to accept. Accepted anxiety as normal, accepted constant distraction as normal, accepted emotional heaviness as normal, accepted spiritual distance as normal. But normal does not always mean healthy, and familiar does not always mean safe. That is the hidden doorway through which darkness often enters. Not through dramatic evil, through slow acceptance, through gradual compromise, through years of saying, "I'll deal with it later." And now heaven is asking you to see what has been hiding in plain sight. Not so you will feel guilty, not so you will feel ashamed, but so you can finally understand where the drift began. Because once you see it clearly, you can stop it. And once you stop it, everything begins changing. The disaster is not inevitable. The warning exists because restoration is still possible. And the one speaking to you now has never stopped pursuing your heart. Now that you can see where the drift began, I want to show you something even more important. You are not being called into fear. You are being called into awareness. Many people hear a warning and immediately expect condemnation. They assume heaven is angry, disappointed, ready to punish. But that is not what this moment is. If I wanted to abandon you, I would not be speaking to you now. If I wanted to leave you alone, I would not be interrupting your attention. The warning itself is proof of my care. Because love warns, love protects, love refuses to stay silent when danger approaches. And what I am trying to protect is not merely your circumstances. It is your future, your peace, your purpose, your ability to recognize my voice when the next season begins. Pause, there is someone listening right now who has become exhausted from trying to carry everything alone. Not because nobody loves you, but because you stopped believing other people could truly understand. So you learn to carry burdens quietly. You learn to smile while overwhelmed. You learn to keep moving while inwardly struggling. And over time, that survival strategy became a lifestyle. But I never designed you to live that way. I never designed your soul to function under constant pressure. I never designed your heart to carry every responsibility without rest. And I certainly never designed you to navigate life without my guidance. That is why I am calling you back. Not back to religion, not back to performance, not back to guilt, back to relationship, back to stillness, back to trust, back to the place where you can hear my voice clearly again. Do you remember Mary sitting at my feet while Martha rushed around trying to manage everything? Martha was busy doing many important things. That she was missing the most important thing: presence, connection, stillness. That story has always been deeper than activity versus inactivity. It is about priorities, because even good responsibilities can become distractions when they replace intimacy with God. There is someone listening right now whose schedule has become louder than their spirit. Your calendar is full, your mind is full, your responsibilities are full, but your soul is hungry, hungry for peace, hungry for clarity, hungry for a sense of direction that cannot be found through constant activity. And the beautiful truth is this: you do not have to earn your way back. You do not have to become perfect before approaching me. You do not have to solve every problem first. You simply have to stop running, pause for a moment, stop fixing, stop calculating, stop predicting every possible outcome, stop trying to control what only heaven can control. Because there are answers that only appear in stillness. There is wisdom that only arrives in quietness. There is healing that only begins when striving finally ends. And here is the prophetic turn. The thing you feared was coming to destroy you may actually become the thing that awakens you. The delay, the frustration, the discomfort, the warning, all of it can become the doorway that leads you back to clarity, back to purpose, back to peace. Because I have not abandoned you. I still see you. I am still near. And this interruption is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new direction. One where fear no longer leads. One where distraction no longer rules. One where your spirit becomes stronger than the noise surrounding it. And that journey begins the moment you answer the call heaven has been making all along. The enemy wanted you to believe this warning was about fear. It was never about fear. It was about awakening. Because the greatest tragedy is not failure. The greatest tragedy is forgetting who you are, forgetting what you carry, forgetting what heaven placed inside you long before life became complicated. And that is exactly what distraction has been trying to accomplish. Not necessarily to destroy your future, but to make you forget it, to keep you occupied with survival until purpose becomes an afterthought, to keep you reacting to problems until you stop preparing for your calling. There is someone listening right now who once felt deeply connected to a dream, a purpose, a sense of direction. You knew there was more ahead, not necessarily wealth, not necessarily success, but significance, meaning, impact. Then life happened, disappointments happen, responsibilities happen, pressure happened, and gradually, your focus shifted from purpose to survival, from vision to maintenance, from calling to coping. Pause. That shift is understandable. But it was never meant to be permanent, because your purpose is still alive, not weakened, not forgotten, not canceled, alive, waiting, growing beneath the surface in ways you cannot yet see. Do you remember Jacob wrestling through the night? The struggle felt endless. The darkness felt long. The breakthrough did not come immediately. But he left that encounter changed, not because the struggle disappeared, because the struggle revealed something: identity. And that is what heaven is revealing in this season. Not merely what you should do next, but who you truly are, because when identity becomes clear, direction becomes clear. When identity becomes clear, fear loses power. When identity becomes clear, purpose begins rising again. There is someone listening tonight who has underestimated themselves for years. You have focused so much on what you lack that you have forgotten what you possess. You see weakness. Heaven sees resilience. You see mistakes. Heaven sees growth. You see delays. Heaven sees preparation. You see ordinary days. Heaven sees hidden transformation. And one day, you will look back at this season and realize it was not destroying you. It was refining you. The warning was not about disaster. It was about direction. The interruption was not about punishment. It was about alignment. The discomfort was not proof that God had left. It was evidence that God was still pursuing you. Because your story is not over. I still see you. I still know your name. I still know the plans I have for your life. Plans that fear cannot cancel. Plans that distraction cannot erase. Plans that delay cannot destroy. There are opportunities ahead you cannot yet imagine. There are conversations ahead that will change your direction. There are answers ahead that are already moving toward you, and there are parts of your purpose that have not even begun to unfold yet. So do not measure your future by your current confusion. Do not measure your calling by your present and do not mistake a difficult season for a defeated destiny. Because heaven still remembers you, heaven is still guiding you, and the purpose placed inside you is still very much alive, waiting for you to walk fully into it. Before you leave this message, be still for a moment, not because every problem has been solved, not because every answer has arrived, but because your soul deserves a moment of peace, a moment without rushing, a moment without fear, a moment without carrying tomorrow before tomorrow comes. Pause. Heavenly Father, I pray for the person listening right now, the one who almost ignored this message, the one who has been carrying burdens silently, the one who has been distracted, overwhelmed, exhausted, or uncertain about the future. You know every hidden struggle, every private fear, every unanswered question, every moment they felt something was wrong but could not explain why. Lord, thank you for not remaining silent. Thank you for warning us when we begin drifting. Thank you for pursuing us when we become distracted. Thank you for continuing to call us back even when we have stopped paying attention. Father, bring clarity where confusion has lived. Bring peace where anxiety has lived. Bring wisdom where uncertainty has lived. And bring stillness where noise has taken over. There is someone listening right now who has been trying to carry responsibilities that were never meant to be carried alone. Please remind them that you are still near, that they do not have to navigate every decision through fear, that they do not have to solve every problem through their own strength, and that your guidance is still available to them. Pause, Lord, protect their mind, protect their peace, protect their purpose, protect their ability to hear your voice in a world filled with noise. Help them recognize distractions before distractions. Help them recognize warnings before warnings become consequences. Help them recognize opportunities before opportunities pass unnoticed. And most importantly, help them recognize your presence, because your presence changes everything. Your presence brings peace. Your presence brings direction. Your presence brings strength for tomorrow. Father, for the person who feels afraid of the future, replace fear with trust. For the person who feels spiritually distant, replace distance with closeness. For the person who feels overwhelmed, replace pressure with peace. For the person who feels lost, replace confusion with clarity. And for the person who feels forgotten, remind them once again that heaven still remembers their name. I have not abandoned you. I still see you. You are not fighting alone. Your story is not over. I am still near. You are still loved. And the future ahead of you is not being written by fear. It is being guided by the God who has walked beside you all along. So rest tonight, breathe deeply, release what you cannot control, and trust that the one who warned you is also the one who will guide you. In Jesus' name, amen.